viewers, and again, thank you for being part of the Y Summit. I mean, lots of good things going on, and the whole of today, our engagement has been on the church in the digital space. And this conversation that we're going to have this at this particular time is also on that, because the digital space and the church is such an important conversation and has been even further emphasized by the COVID season. And I'm so glad that in this conversation today we have two wonderful conversationists, and they are shapers in the youth ministry area, and they have been that for a long time. And I want to say that I'm very glad to have here Ernest Wamboye, who is many things, many things. But one thing that I would want to say is that he is so passionate about the ministry of young people, not just the young people, but the ministry of the young people in the Church of Jesus Christ. And I want to welcome you. I'll give you a chance to say something more about yourself. And also would want to welcome John Gathuku, who is also a big, a person who, a youth leader who has been in the youth leadership for as long as I know. And he has done some amazing work. And now we are talking about the digital space, and he is behind the Timanzi magazine, which is a teen-based magazine that goes out to educate young people on so many issues. And also, I would say that as we talk about the digital church, these youth leaders here are visionaries as far as that is concerned. So you're welcome to be part of this program. Again, just gleaning out of wisdom from this wonderful gentleman. Ernest,
yes,
just tell us something a little more about yourself.
Thank you. Thanks so much for inviting me. My name is Ernest Wamboye, as you've heard. I am a follower of Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ is Lord. I am a husband, a father, and a minister of the gospel, and I serve at the Relationship Center, where I run a pornography addiction recovery program. I run a podcast, the Relationship Center podcast, and an award-winning blog called penstrokes.co.ke, amongst a few other ministries. So I'm really glad to be here and looking forward to having this conversation. It's very much needed. Yes.
Great, great. Thank you. When you mentioned some of the things like pornography, for instance, it's a word that many people are not able to even pronounce.
Yeah.
But that's what you deal with on a day-to-day basis. And what a bold ministry that has helped so many people. Again, we are glad to have you in this conversation. Yes, John.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here. My name is John Gathuku. I am married to Maggie, and we have 3 children. I'm part of a team that brings you the Timanzi magazine, which is a publication that serves among teenagers in this country and in Africa, helping teenagers engage with their own contemporary realities from the perspective of the gospel. And also we do training on media awareness, helping us understand the media messages, how the media works, and how the Christian ought to think about the messages that come through the media content.
Okay, great. And happy to have you guys. Let's start with Ernest. The COVID season, right?
Yes.
The COVID season has had a lot of things that have happened. And one of the big things is the space of technology in the church. Can you just share your experience as far as that is concerned?
All right. So when COVID struck, I really expected to be very inactive, because most of my ministry engagements involved having meetings in church, having seminars and all that. 2 of my ministries are online. That is the podcast and the blog, which is constant. But I really expected like the pornography addiction recovery program for the men, and we're just about to start one for the women. I really expected that to just really go down. Quite the contrary. We got so many messages of people saying, hey, man, the struggle is real. And we realized that the use of the internet really went up when people were quarantined at home and when people were required to stay home because of the curfew. And because of that, we got more messages than actually before of people who were just saying, hey, I'm struggling with pornography. I really want out. And so we've been online a lot as well, sending out our content, sending out our books, sending out tips, referring people to some of the articles we've written. And it became a bit overwhelming, to say the truth, trying to connect people with other people. And I really realized that this space, at least in the Kenyan church, it's lacking, because you find that the harvest is online, but the laborers are offline. All right? There's a lot of work to be done. But even like you say, to even talk about a vice like lust, pornography, you find church ministers saying, I don't know how to deal with that, So COVID has presented an opportunity to minister. My worry and the breaking of my heart has been the inability of the church to really step up and minister to people in this area.
All right, that's an interesting that how your mind was reversed, that you thought there would be a downtime, only for it to be a really hating time in terms of how the services have been needed, for especially in that area, and how you've had to use the digital platform now to pass on, the counsel that you do and to effect the ministry. That's amazing. And I'm sure there's some learning lessons there.
Yes.
And let's see how the conversation unfolds and see whether we can be able to hear more about that. John, yours is definitely a media ministry, because once you have the magazine that goes out every so often, wonderful content. And during this COVID season, what has been your experience as a youth minister?
During this period of time when the schools were closed, and that has been the main expression of our ministry, because we work with about 400 schools around the country. So when the schools were closed, we had an interesting kind of situation, and our engagement with the schools kind of were cut off. But unknown to many people, we have a very active ministry among students training to be teachers. And we also do seminars to parents and teachers concerning media. So what happened is that we just got a whole lot of opportunities to start now training a little bit more around the issues of media. Just yesterday, we have finished a whole 28-day media challenge with the Presbyterian youth, where we have been reading the book Media Choices, which has been quite an exciting journey. Last night, I was facilitating a session with Sierra Leone graduates on romantic relationships. So we have had new opportunities that have shown up, and maybe even areas we haven't as much exploited like before. So we are also kind of on the learning curve. Yeah,
that's interesting. Just how we've had to really learn very fast. And I'm sure we are part of churches. And one of the things that is happening now is that some churches that were so worried about closing are now reluctant to reopen. And what's their confidence? Their online ministry, which they didn't have before. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, I was serving in Sitam Valley Road, and I'm part of Sitam Church Online, So it's a specific ministry, to reach out to people online. And I remember when we were first approached by a team from what's his name, Richard Njau's team, 4Up Digital. They came and they sold this vision to us, saying, hey, you guys are doing well. You've got branches all over the country, but you're not online. And if you are online, you've got a page that's inactive. Someone posts perhaps once every 2 weeks, there's no activity on it. And so they came with a proposal, and they spoke, there were certain key phrases that stood out for me. They said content is king. And they said, you guys have content, the church has content. I mean, you talk about, ask the church, ask anyone from the church to speak into a certain issue that even is affecting society. We've got the content. Content is king. But they said, social media is queen, And the king and the queen need to be together. The king and the queen need to have a marriage, And if you marry these two, you have a very powerful witness in the world. And 4Up Digital kept telling us that the way the world is going, the words of Jesus Christ, that these gospels have reached the ends of the earth, and then the end shall come, perhaps it will happen digitally more than physically. And so they sold that idea, and I would say my church was caught ready. All right. And that inspired me personally in my personal ministry, because I'd been ministering, I'd been having the sessions, classes with the men, and someone told me, just digitize your content. There are people in other places of the world who would want to reach you, just digitize it. So I digitized it. I got a company that recorded, did everything, we agreed on a revenue sharing formula, and I put it out there. When COVID broke out, that's when they just started releasing my content. And I thought, oh, what convenient, So that was convenient. not really because we foresaw the pandemic, but really because we just took advantage of social space. But I know there are many churches that got caught flat-footed, you know, and some churches were now setting up Facebook accounts, setting up digital spaces. And I don't know if it's right to say too late, too little, but it's been an upward struggle. I've talked to a few pastors who said, oh my goodness, I should have embraced this sooner. I should have not demonized social media. I should not have demonized Facebook. Facebook is not moral or immoral. You know, it's in between. It's like a knife, you know, a knife in the hands of a surgeon will save lives. A scalpel, you know, in the hands of a murderer will end lives. You know,
Ernest, you've said something very interesting
Yes.
there. Pastors who were demonizing the digital space,
Yes.
and especially when it comes to the social media aspect. But now are saying, I wish, you know, I had got into this space earlier.
Yes.
And I want you, John, to comment on this. You know, somebody said that COVID has sanitized the digital space for the church. Can you comment on that?
The unfortunate bit about most of the innovative technologies that we get, and particularly the ones that are in entertainment and social dynamics, is that most of them, when they first are launched, they have content that is wicked. And in our minds, we associate the first thing we see on the platform with the platform itself. I do recall, for instance, the first time Facebook came on and I signed up, and a few ministers looked at me and thought, what we have seen on Facebook, and you're a minister and you're on Facebook, they couldn't really reconcile that very well. And the same is happening with TikTok. Right now, most of us are a bit wait and see concerning TikTok, and most of us don't even want to get there. But I can tell you for real, in a few months even to come, the content will now start taking shift, and mostly it's because a number of us do not take a lead in terms of making contribution to the content that is out there on the social platforms that are available.
Yeah. Would you then say, and I'll stay with you, would you then say that the digital space is holy ground?
Wow, that's a word. I would say that the digital space provides us, because we are not of the world, but we are sent to the world. And because God has sent us to the world, we need to be there. If we are to be the salt of the world, we need to be inside the food so that we can make it salty. And I would say that our presence is what brings forth the holiness. It is our presence in the midst of everything that is being used that actually changes the space where now we occupy, then becomes holy ground, because we have arrived and we are there.
You know, the song that comes to mind, Ernest, is "This is holy ground."
Yeah.
You're standing on holy ground, and here you are in the internet. You know, the holy ground, the concept of the holy ground, come to that space, which leads me to ask you the question of you know, the biblical basis of this shift to the digital space for the church.
All right. I would say what Paul the Apostle said, I have become all things to all men, that in doing so I may win some. And Paul understands that when he's ministering to the Jews, all right, he'll go to the temple, he'll perform all the ordinances, and when he goes to the Gentiles, he will eat the meat, you know, and he's not been hypocritical. He's been all things to all men that he may win some. He is firm on his principle, but he's dynamic on his strategy. All right. And so the gospel gives us a very fundamental message that should not be changed. The message that is given to us by the Lord Jesus should remain constant. We should be fundamental about it. We should not apologize to it, no matter who hates it. All right. However, we should be dynamic in the strategy, in the delivery of that message, such that we don't compromise the message, but we still enable that message to penetrate the hearts of people in various ways. So Paul the Apostle saying those words really, really stand out for me as a good biblical basis to engage on social media to do that. I also think the whole call for evangelism, you know, Matthew 28, 18 to 20, all authority has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and the Holy Spirit, all right? So there's the discipleship aspect, but there's also the evangelism aspect. And going out, you write something today, and people, someone who's thousands of miles away can read it immediately, can be inspired. I have led people to Christ through social media. And I see that and I'm thinking, oh, that's it's part of the Great Commission. That's amazing. That's amazing. And social media gives us a fantastic ground that at times some ground missions cannot give us. I mean, I still advocate for the ground missions, but there's a very unique space on social media because you see, today if the president tweets, his tweet is right next to yours. So people read what the president says and then they read yours. So it's closed the gap. The power distance has been closed. That's a fantastic opportunity, and I think the church will really take it.
Okay, you know that's. I want you to also, John, comment on this because there are some ministers, there are some churches, some church leaders who are still ish about the digital space, and are looking forward to what we can call the reopening of the church, so they can go back to the old. To bring the old into this new space, what would you say to those church leaders from your experience?
I think one is that the COVID situation has made most of the church leaders to rethink their positions when you're left with no other option apart from the digital space. So that has been one, the fact that this is the only space now you have. But secondly, as they have watched other churches and other ministries engage online and having fruit in doing so, that has also, I think, kind of starting to mellow and giving it a chance to think about. But in the long run, I think that will be inevitable. Reason being, we are called to go to the people. When Jesus is going to the synagogue was not just a religious place, it was also a social place where people would meet. And therefore, we need to be in those spaces where people are in terms of their social connections and where people are actually interacting one with another. And it is just a matter of time. I would say it is just a matter of time. The shift has happened. And it's just a matter of time that we will need now to school ourselves, re-educate, relearn some of the things that we had wrongly learned, and develop a critical mind. Because I know a number of them would have reservations based on certain biblical convictions in terms of content and in terms of all other content available there. And there are serious concerns in terms of moving to the digital space, which maybe I think we can make mention of. There are a few concerns that are there, and I think we need to respond to them intelligibly and kind of engage them, as opposed to just throwing away the baby with the bucket. Yeah.
All right, you bring a statement there that the shift has already happened.
Yes.
And Ernest, that's a very strong statement. The shift has happened.
Yeah, the train has left the station.
The train has left the station, as you say.
has left the tube.
Yeah, and that is fundamental. And I just want you to speak to that truth.
Yes.
Let me call it the truth, that the train has left the station.
Yes.
Tell us where it's going.
All right. So content is king, social media is queen, and this couple is going somewhere. All right. The world is becoming more digitized, and as it becomes more digitized, we must remember that it's not a challenge to the message of the gospel. It's not a challenge to Christianity. Jesus said that trouble will come, all right? And I think what's happening right now is that there's an either-or approach. It's either church or social media. It's not necessarily an either-or approach. It's a both-and. And that's where we're going. It's a both-and approach. That by the grace of God, if COVID does die down, all right, and by faith, when it dies down, all right, that the churches will resume, all right? But let them not neglect the social media space. Let it not be that the social media space was a platform to be used during a pandemic, right? I think it was an awakening saying, hey, you can't attend church right now. Use the next available platform. Now, when you can attend church, don't abandon that platform, all right? Maximum use for the kingdom of God. And we may say, oh, no, but we are not ready for that kind of input. We are not ready for that kind of work because we just want to stay in the good old days. Now, I remember Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 10, where Solomon says, do not say we are the good old days, for it is not out of wisdom that you ask this, right? So the scriptures themselves challenge leaders to have foresight. To be forward thinking, to actually look ahead and actually think, how can we be shrewd for the sake of the kingdom of God? So I would say we are getting to a point where as the world, as we advance towards the end of times, we know for sure that there'll be a great falling away from the church. We know that there'll be an apostasy, all right? We know that church attendance will not get more popular with time. It will get worse, all right? Where will people be? Like Johnny said, Christ went to where people are. People will be online. We better be there, all right? As we approach the end that Christ talked about, let's take the gospel to where people are. Let's break out. I think, I just think about how evangelists have been, were very rare, so to speak, before COVID. And you'd have an evangelist come, he spent 3 years in Malaysia, he tells you all the work he's doing, he shows you all the photos he's done. We get emotional, we cry, we give him money, he goes back. It's time for all of us to be evangelists, social media evangelists, all right? And the Bible in the book of Ephesians says that the fivefold ministry of God, their work is to equip the church for the work of ministry. But what's happened in the past is that the fivefold have been the ministry, and then the church members the congregants have come to feed, so to speak. But let's go back to the biblical model, where the fivefold equip us, and we go out and minister. We still remain committed to our local church, because Hebrews 10:24-25 do not neglect the gathering together of believers, all right? But right now, I pray that the equipping that has happened, the discipleship that has happened, the preachings we've had on the pulpit all over, we can take a video, and all you need to do is take a video from your mobile phone and just record it, put it on social media. You will be surprised how our collective efforts as the body of Christ, not in competition to one another, but complementing one another, can really, really prepare the world for the coming of Christ Jesus. Yeah.
Okay. You know, that's yeah, you want to say some more about that? Yeah.
Yes. And also to say that I think it's only in the few years that have passed where Christians have not been at the forefront of technological advancement. When you think about the printing press, it was by a Christian, Gutenberg. When you think about the Morse code that gave room now to the kind of communication we are having, that was a Christian who did that. So Christians in church history have been at the very forefront of technological advancement, and that has been developed because of our worldview. We believe that this world belongs to our Father. And because this belongs to our Father, and this is our Father's kingdom, then we use His wisdom that He has given us to be able to be involved there. So we don't walk away from that which God is calling us. We enter to actually have dominion and bringing forth, so that every nation, every tribe will worship Him. And so we don't create a segregation where we say this is where we stay, and where there the digital space is where all the wicked people meet and do all these kind of things. I think, like we are saying, is that we become the salt. And by becoming the salt is that once we enter into those spaces, then those spaces change because of our presence.
Okay. It's interesting because we are not talking about whether to be in the digital space. We are saying that we must be in the digital space. Yes. And some very strong statements like Great Commission, the people are online, you know. And talking about history, for instance, that in the past, Christians have been on the front line of innovations and turning around of ways of communication. And now here we are. And just before we go for the break, I just want to again just have a view about young people in this space. And before we get to the visionary part, I just want you to comment about the role of young people in helping the church stay relevant and stay online and stay alive during the COVID season. Ernest.
Well, I remember the words of Paul the Apostle to Timothy when he says, "Do not let anyone despise you because you are young, but be an example to the believers in speech, in faith, in love, in conduct, and in purity." So Paul the Apostle is basically saying a young person has no excuse to not be mature. You know, a young person can be an example. And then he lists out the examples in speech, in faith, in love, in conduct, and in purity. Those are 5 areas that a young person can actually express on social media. In speech, the things you say, and you'll be surprised that there are young people today who've got followers, who've got platforms on social media that are bigger than their own local churches. The guy tweets and you've got hundreds of thousands of people responding. And so he's got influence, right? Imagine if he uses his speech for the glory of God. Faith, He combines it with his faith, that I'm able to integrate my belief in Jesus Christ. The number of people he will influence, the consideration of who is this Jesus Christ, why Christianity, you know, love, the ability to express affection to other people on social media. Social media is filled with so much brutality. Go to Twitter and I'm telling you, you have to have your helmet on, you know, the rocks are flying, you get on the wrong side of Kenyans on Twitter, oh man, you retire, you sink into depression and all that, you know. But imagine one who expresses love, you know, one who expresses the affection of Jesus Christ to one who is wrong, one who is hurting, you know. Speech, faith, love, conduct. The way we carry ourselves out on social media, it's seen, you know, the photos we post, the videos we post, our behavior, it can be seen. And then in purity. All right, there's a lot of immorality. I read a statistic that said at some point, I think 2 years ago, they did an analysis of all the content online, and they found that close to 45% of the internet content was pornographic content. It's that much. Videos, photos, all that. So imagine being countercultural. A Christian who pursues absolute purity, purity in their sexuality, purity in thought, purity in virtue. That is countercultural. A young person is commanded by Paul the Apostle to embrace all those. Take that social media. You're good.
Ernest, I know, John, you also have a lot to say about this, how the young people have actually sustained the church during this COVID season and their role there. And we'll talk about more about, you know, their going forward, the place of young people and the church ministry in this digital shift. And viewers, this is the Y Summit, and we're talking about this inevitable shift of moving from what we have known to now this digital space and church and ministry. And again, thanks for being with us, and do send your comments. We would want to just see them. Stay with us. We'll be back shortly after this break. Again, welcome. This is the Y Summit, and lots of good things are happening in this Youth Summit. And one of the things that we've been engaging is the shift of the church and the ministry to the digital space. And what has come out from our panelists so far is that the train has left the station. It is not an issue of whether to engage the digital space. It is more how we get there. And we are very happy to be with Ernest, Wamboye, also with John Gathuku being part of this conversation. Again, do send us your views and your comments. We are very grateful that you're part of this conversation. And John, just before we went to the break, we were talking about young people and the way they have helped the church, you know, stay relevant in this time, the COVID season.
I would like to remind us that David served God in his generation. And every one of us will serve God in your generation. What does that mean? It means that David served God in the context and the realities of his own generation. So God has prepared you and I for the context and the realities that we are in. Therefore, as a young person, you've been born into this digital age. And therefore, you have all it takes. And God is going to give you the opportunities for you to become a light in this time and day. And so it is a wonderful thing. I remember one of my fellow students while I was at the university. He used to tell me, because we used to stay in the hostels and there was so much immorality, he told me, John, I am so glad I'm born in this generation and was brought to this university so that all the other students will see how a righteous student looks like in the midst of all this immorality. Instead of him bemoaning the fact of what was happening, he felt privileged to be unique and to stand for Christ in a context and an environment where immorality was prevalent. Yeah, and I think I would want to encourage young people to think like that. As opposed to thinking about how much evil is happening online, think about what a wonderful opportunity that you have, that God has given you in your generation to serve him like David.
You know, I'm thinking of one of the statements that has come out of church leaders a lot during this COVID time is where are the young people to help us with this thing? This thing, this thing becomes, anything internet, anything technology. And it's interesting that most of the churches have actually stayed afloat, because of the young people who are able to deal with this thing. Now, how do young people continue with this thing?
All right. So basically, the impact that we make and how we can learn. So I think one of the ways we can know how to just really stay afloat, make impact, because when we're offline, Johnny kept telling us how the world has got its methods, the world has got its ways, its mechanisms to really lure in people. The Kardashians got famous because of some nudities that they posted online. That's a method. It worked. They got people to follow them. We don't want our pastors to post nudes on Twitter, right? But what can we do? What can we do to make impact? I think the first thing I would say is vulnerability in content. People online gravitate towards vulnerable content. My blog really skyrocketed and got to win national awards when I began talking about my personal struggle with pornography and my victory out of it. I kept saying, hey guys, this thing is real. And I was stuck in for so long, and this is, my mom is a pastor, and this, vulnerable content. And people read that and they see you being vulnerable and people gravitate towards that because now it shows you're human, That kind of content means impact. If we can use our social media platform to be vulnerable, people gravitate towards us. Other thing I would say is heroism. People want countercultural opinion leaders. Most of our opinion leaders are going with the flow and are afraid to say something that will lose followers. Now Christ says, if you're not willing to be my disciple, if you're not willing to lose mother, father, and you're not willing to die, you cannot be my disciple. Now, we may think that if we do that, we lose, but quite the contrary. The world is looking for someone who will stand up and say the truth and say, hey, yes, I know you are all supporting this view, but as a young person, I still think that one man, one woman is the standard for marriage. I still think that it's not good to cohabit, that I will still wait. Now, you see, you become a hero. You challenge the culture. When you challenge the culture, you attract content, you attract viewership, you make an impact, and we are not being heroes. We are not trying to look for shock value. We're just we're just basically standing for truth, because that truth will really shine in the darkness. And of course, these things also have got their pet peeves. There's the opposite of what can reduce your impact, which perhaps if we get time we'll look at that. The next thing that helps us have impact is sensitivity. Being sensitive to people's feelings. Social media is reputable for being brutal. Does not care about how you feel. There's a famous quote by Ben Shapiro: facts don't care about feelings. We are here to talk about the issues. If you are usikach toka, So, but when you're sensitive in your content, when you can deliver the truth in such a way that people can hear it, and not in such a way that you try to put people down, people listen to that kind of content. People that makes impact because it shows you care. All right. Now we are not talking about being politically correct and being unable to say the truth and just saying you know what, I won't say the truth because I want to please anyone. No, you're not pleasing everyone. You are saying the truth, but you're landing it in a way that it is digestible. All right. Another way to make impact is through clarity. There are too many people on social media who are seeking to impress. Very few people are seeking to express, right? And so you find it's a competition. It's like it's a beauty competition. Who's smarter now? Who's people try and even in a comment section, you're arguing with someone, but they're really not trying to get their point across. They're really trying to put you down. The world really appreciates people who make sense, people who know what they're saying. And when you're clear in your content, at times when I preach and someone tells me, hey, that was deep, I go like, ooh, but was it clear? It's good, it's deep, but I hope it's clear first, and then it's deep second. All right, and then people want brief content. That's the truth. The attention span on social media is it's people don't even when I open my WhatsApp and I see a video has been sent on a group and I see the video is 13 minutes, I don't watch it. I skip it. I see one is 1 minute 30 seconds. I watch that one. It's brief content. If there is a way we can condense our content, to make it have more oomph, have the impetus come powerfully, we can really make an impact on social media. And then finally, I'll just say, and I say this with a pinch of salt, entertaining content. we should not lose the message that we're giving at the expense of entertainment. However, delivery matters. You may have good content, but you're very bogus in your delivery, you know. And so at times I like to just change environment. I won't record that video in my living room. I'll step out. I'll go, you know, I'll change, you know, I'll go by the pool. I'll go by somewhere. I'll look for good environment, you know. I will start by telling you how my week has been. You're trying to engage people, all right? And so just that liveliness is really important to just capture people's attention. Now, do not use entertainment as an exchange. Don't try and use it to bait people. Let your message bait people, all right? However, let entertainment be a supplement, all right? Let the creativity, actually it's creativity, not entertainment. The word is creativity.
Pedagogy,
creativity.
actually.
I think entertainment is not the right one. Creativity is the word. Let the creativity supplement your content and not let your content supplement the creativity. Otherwise, you'll end up being an entertainer. And we're not entertainers, we're ministers.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's very, very vulnerable and countercultural, sensitive, clarity, brief, and with a pinch of salt, entertainment. Very clear modes of being present there. And these are relevant both for the individual Christian and also for the organization of the church as organization. And staying with that, John, it seems this is a new area. I mean, not it seems, it really is a new area for many people. And somebody could be asking, how does empowerment, where can I get empowerment for me to thrive as a person, as an institution in this new space? How does empowerment look like?
Okay. I would like first to say that there are two different kind of things to reflect on. Number one, just the whole area of the technological competency that is needed for you to shift online. And many of us, when we're thinking about engaging young people, that's what we're actually thinking about. That's what we are talking about. We are saying, I need someone who can operate the camera. I need someone who can know how to upload and do this video. That's a technical competence. But secondly, there are theological considerations. And these are more serious than the technical ones. Reason being, as you're moving, one, you will need to know that media is a whole new space. And you may have the same content on the pulpit, but moving that content from the pulpit to a media space is a whole new different environment that has its own rules, it has its own ways that it operates, and you will need to first change how you're thinking and not imagine that you can just transplant your sermon and just land it pop.
I remember, just to support that, I remember one time when I did the sermon and I thought it was shareable, and so I shared it online. And then one of the comments was like, I'm so disappointed.
Wow.
Oh no. The people on the ground told me, this is one person was like, I'm so disappointed. It really, as you say, it's a new space. People will take it differently. People
don't get, when you preach a sermon, you don't get live feedback.
Yes.
When you put up something on social media, people give you feedback, unsolicited feedback. And sometimes you're not ready for that.
You tell us more about that. Yes.
And for instance, when you talk about the social media is not structured for any serious engagement. If you look at now what Ernest has just told us, people want things that are entertaining, people want things that are brief, people want things that are just moving on, because at the click of a finger you can move on to the next content. So how do you think about moving the message we have about the cross, the message about death and life, into a context whereby it's an entertainment structure that undergirds it? And therefore, it calls for repackaging what you have in a way that the pedagogy, in terms of your mode of...
John, pedagogy, just break it down. I'm sure the dictionary has more words. Yes,
Sorry, I think it's just the mode of delivery.
That's okay.
The mode of delivery that you're giving in it is something that is inviting. And what our brother is saying is that stories are much more relational than abstract truth. And therefore, if I want to speak about an abstract truth, I would want to talk about my story. And when you share your story, we all love stories. And like he says, when you look at the Bible is not written in one format. You have the Psalms, which are poetic. Then you'll go to the law, that is just stating facts. Then you go to the history books, where they're just telling stories of people. And so God is also dynamic in terms of how he delivers content. And he brings in all this variety that keeps you engaged in what he is saying. And therefore, that will be number one thing. Think about, how do I transit my content and think differently about the same content that we have. When we first launched the Timazi magazine and we gave out to a teacher, and they say this content is so deep, a teenager won't read it. But what we did is that we also engaged a very gifted designer. So when you look at the magazine face value, it draws you in, you want to read it. Okay, but then once you get in, there are stories in there, there are different kind of things that engages the teenager, and you won't believe it. That, we're in 400 schools, and all this is driven by the students. And we were shocked that actually students are also seeking for truth. People are looking for truth. And because the gospel in itself is counterculture, in itself, without even you making it, it is counterculture. The statements of Jesus were radical and straight. And if you just state them the way they are, that makes a whole difference. But number two, allow me to say this, that media makes evangelism way much easier, but discipleship much more difficult. And that's a reality that many church leaders may not be awakened to, that it will be easy to reach the people, but it will become much more difficult to relate with them and raise the level of accountability that you have with them. Why? Because partly social media and many other platforms are opinionated. Everybody would want to say what they think. Yet ours is where we are leading people to truth that is absolute. So how do I lead you to an absolute truth while allowing you to express to me where you are and what this truth means for you from your position? That's something we need to grapple with and allow to give that space as a church minister.
Yes, some interesting statements there. Very enlightening, because sometimes we might get this evangelistic excitement that, hey, more people, we're reaching more people and everything, but now turning them to disciples, we must be ready, to do more work, through the digital platform, which is very insightful. And
which means we can't abandon the physical.
Yes.
We cannot abandon the physical. We need to keep that, and I think that helps us as we navigate and make the shift to the digital. We need to know that the digital won't deliver everything. The discipleship must be contact, and that must be in the back of our minds in the way we model and structure our engagement online, knowing we need to navigate it to a place whereby it will still bring forth the kind of discipleship.
I really agree with that, because one of the things that we've noticed at least for me, as even for the few people that I remember having led to Christ, after that is done, my next concern is for them is, are you near a local church? I'm like, all right, good. So you've come to Christ, all right? Okay, you can't keep reading my blogs. You can't keep watching videos on YouTube. You can't, and I mean, you can still get some really good content on YouTube, but again, there's some really bad content on YouTube, even in the name of church, in the name of the prosperity gospel, theological views that are just out of line with Scripture. You need to be grounded in a local church. So I like that, because you see, there's some synergism between the old and the new. And if you're stuck with the old, you must realize we're not calling you to abandon the old. We're calling you to simply ameliorate on what is already
That's
there.
a big word, man.
Improve.
Exactly. That's what you guys, man. Big words.
Big words, big God. Yes. So that's basically it.
I think you raise an important issue there about the old and the new, and that whole synergy there, because when it comes to the digital shift, it's been mostly seen as a young people thing, and so the senior generation, seems to be like, hey, that's a young people thing. But if it's really a digital shift, if it is a shift that God wants us to make, right, and God is leading us in, right, then how do we make sure? And I would want Ernest to respond to this first. How do we make sure that we don't leave generations behind, that it's an intergenerational movement?
All right. So I think one of the ways to do that is to ensure, they say that the fish rots from the head. All right. So once the head is looped in, if you can get senior pastors, church leaders, youth pastors sold into the vision, it's easy to do that. But if you have if you have the congregants who are so passionate about this thing, and then the head is hitting down at them, they even become a bit insecure on how to use that, right? But if the senior pastors, if the youth pastors, work together and come up and just say, hey, we are going to do this. We are actually going to embrace this. And we're going to have a strategy. When I was serving in the Sitam Church online platform, I liked it because they took it so serious. They even had an office. And they took a pastor, and they took two pastors. Those two pastors were in charge of online activity for the church, and they'd schedule meetings, and they'd call us, and they'd sit us down, and they'd train us, how, and they'd tell us, and remember, you are presented on the online church platform. In your personal platform, whoever sees you there will remember you from there, so behave there as well, There'll be those kinds of dynamics of training. That really, and it picked up so fast. In fact, even the church was given the opportunity to even start advertising when they had not yet reached the time threshold, but they had reached the numbers, and they're told, oh, you can actually start advertising, you can actually start, your page can actually graduate to this level, because there's some platforms like YouTube that, the more you expand, the more you grow, they graduate and give you more benefits. And that happened simply because the bishop of the church ran with it. The bishop of the church ran with it, and they said, we are doing it, we are running with it, it's gonna happen. And what you see in other churches at times is that you've got one passionate pastor somewhere, who's passionate about it, and he's got this huge giant to bring down called the rest of the church, Leadership starts, John C. Maxwell, leadership starts at the top. If that can happen, we'll have good ground to cover.
Okay, yeah, good. And I think that intergenerational component, you made the statement that let the senior pastor, let the youth pastor get together and now strategize on that, and that begins now to be intergenerational. So everyone is shifting, and which is, I want to raise to you, John, what I would say a critical question, because young people in their own minds may imagine that this is their space, this is our time, right? I mean, we are the ones on social media, we are the ones who are familiar, who can navigate the digital platform, we are the ones who know the language, who know the TikToks, who know all those things. And in that process of thinking that way, they could just be overtaken by another generation that is not really the young or more senior generation, just on the basis that this other generation is more content developing.
Indeed, like you're saying, we are having the younger people who have the technical competence and who are up to date with the different kind of features that are available in apps. But then we have the older generation that have the content. And when we look at the body of Christ as one, and when we think about the youth that are in the church as part of the body, then you would say, how can this feed into one another in terms of how do we translate that, provide a platform so that the older generation can speak their content, and that content now can be available to everyone. And like we're also saying that this is actually not a generational thing. I mean, it's not just like an age segregation thing, that it's the younger ones who are there. We are all in the digital shift together. Because even as we talk about, say, the negatives of what we are encountering right now, a number of the ones that are affected are actually older people. We are having people who are married into pornography, way older people getting lazy on video games. It's a whole generation thing. But I think also the thing that I wanted maybe to add on that, in terms of what Ernest was saying, is that a number of churches and Christian entities that get into the media space, the other thing that do not understand the media space is actually it is also a business. And therefore, unlike the church, when you say want to begin and to engage into the space of radio or TV and all that, it becomes too expensive than they had actually not thought about. I happen to be sitting in a church council, and And the media team brought a bill of 3 million. And I could tell the other men wondering,
3 million for Facebook.
For Facebook? They can't connect that with it because the physical one is way cheaper. But it will cost you expensively to get high, good quality content available to the listeners, because we do not also want to put out there substandard content in the name of the fact that we are believers. And to put that out there, it will cost you lots of money. So you will also need to invite people within your own congregation who are able to help you think business and how do you turn this around. Again, on the other side, not falling into the same methods that the world uses to raise the same cash. Like you're saying, how they use immorality to bring in the numbers. They use violence and all many other different kinds of evils. And because we don't use those things, it means we need to put in resources. It won't break even that easily. I do not know of many Christian initiatives that break even. But we need to be in that space. Therefore, we need to put our money there. And I want to encourage a pastor who's probably wondering, this is too expensive for us to make the shift. Please make the investment. Even if it doesn't give you
powerful. That's powerful. It's not cheap.
It's not
there's
cheap.
excellence, there's quality. And Ernest, we are really quickly coming to an end of this conversation. It's amazing just how quickly time runs out. But there is also the aspect of, you talk about intergenerationalness of this, but there's also the rural church, and there's a huge rural church, and we are part of this digital shift. Is there a way in which the rural church can actually even lead the urban church in this digital movement?
I remember the words of Paul the Apostle to the Corinthian church when he says, what is it that you have that you did not receive? He said, everything you have, you received from God, right? So if you are born in the urban areas, you did not choose to be born there. You were born there because God in his infinite grace and mercy allowed you in his sovereignty to be born there. You received something. You received an experience and exposure to social media. If you were born in the rural areas, you received something that perhaps an experience that someone in the urban areas did not grow. If you are young, you were born in this generation, you are exposed to media and technologies that older people did not. You received it. You did not choose it, all right? And if you're born and if you're older, you have some experience that some younger people do not have. You received it, all right? And so if everyone realizes that first of all, they have something they've received from God, okay? That is a contribution to make. That it is not the rural church to simply just come, sit down, shut up and listen. They've got something to offer, all right? And they can come and say, hey, we want to offer something. And the urban church can say, yes, we want to offer something. The young people can say, yes, we've got strategies, we've known this thing. The older people can say, yes, we've got experience. Therefore, we are not in competition. And we can even create platforms, platforms, discussions. We can come and talk and say, how can we merge these things together? Rural church bring you experience, urban church bring you experience, young people bring you experience, older people bring you experience, merge it together. I can't wait to eat that cake.
Okay, amazing. That's really fantastic. And I'm even thinking in terms of content.
Yes.
Some of what we can call like the urban spaces run on what we can say are aspects from the rural environment, and that's interesting. They drive a lot of what we can call like urban digital spaces. And
actually, it's also creating like a homogeneous kind of culture.
Yes.
Because media is now starting to permeate the spaces that were secluded. Meaning, when we are here in Kenya, we are able to receive content from any part of the world. And therefore, we have younger people and even people here who more identify with an American culture than maybe they would with their traditional. And I think that also percolates into the villages.
My friend, you have big words. Understood. And friends, I'll just give you like 20 seconds just to give your final, like what do you want the church to know, what do you want the young person to know as we take the digital shift?
The harvest is online, the laborers are offline. Get online.
All right, great. That's an important phrase to remember. Yes.
Great. As we leave, I would say this: prepare yourself. There will be many opportunities coming your way with the digital shift, but also we don't want to fall into the traps of undoing and getting the results that we did not desire. And there is a way that you can actually get trained, and that's part of what we do at Timazi Africa, we can come to your church and give you a session on how to think and critique media and how to make that transition, because that will be critical in the way in now going forward.
All right.
Thank
John
you.
Gathuku, thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
your wonderful insights. We are thankful, Wamboye, for that wonderful, those wonderful thoughts that you have as we move on to this digital space, new digital space, and thank you very much. And, this again is the Y Summit, and clearly, the old is going and the new is coming. Let us embrace the new. Thank you so much. Keep enjoying the Y Summit.